The rain had been falling over Los Angeles since early morning, not the kind that flooded streets, just enough to make people lower their heads and hurry toward somewhere warm. Downtown was busy anyway. Office workers rushed across crosswalks. Delivery drivers carried boxes through puddles. Tourists held coffee cups beneath umbrellas while taking blurry photos of the city. Among them walked a man wearing faded blue jeans, worn brown boots, a black jacket, and a simple baseball cap. No bodyguards, no expensive watch, no cameras. Most people walked past him without a second glance. It was Keanu Reeves. He had finished an early meeting nearby and decided to spend the afternoon the way he often preferred, alone. He enjoyed ordinary places, small bookstores, quiet cafes, neighborhood grocery stores, places where life happened without red carpets or flashing lights. That afternoon, he entered a family-owned grocery store tucked between an old bakery and a flower shop. The little bell above the entrance chimed softly. A warm smell of fresh bread drifted through the aisles. The shelves weren't perfect. Some labels were crooked. A refrigerator hummed loudly near the dairy section, but the store felt alive. Real. An elderly cashier smiled warmly. "Good afternoon." Keanu smiled back. Afternoon. He picked up a shopping basket. Nothing unusual. A loaf of bread, fresh fruit, pasta, tomato soup, dog treats, a bottle of orange juice. He moved slowly through the aisles, reading labels like anyone else. No rush, no attention. Exactly how he liked it. Near the back of the store stood a narrow hallway marked "Employees Only." As Keanu reached for a box of cereal, he heard voices coming from behind the slightly open storage room door. Normally, he would have ignored them, but one sentence stopped him completely. "I don't know how we're going to tell Mom." The voice belonged to a young woman. Her words trembled. Another voice answered. A young man. Quiet. Tired. "We can't tell her yet." Silence. Then, "The surgery is next week." Keanu froze. He hadn't meant to listen. He certainly didn't want to invade anyone's privacy. He quietly stepped away. Yet another sentence drifted through the doorway. "If we lose this job, we lose everything." Those words landed heavily. Keanu looked down at the shopping basket in his hands. For a moment, he remembered another time. Years earlier. Long before worldwide fame. Long before movie premieres. There had been nights when paying rent felt impossible. He remembered skipping meals, sleeping in small apartments, wondering whether tomorrow would be any different. Success had changed his circumstances. It had never erased those memories. He quietly continued shopping, but the conversation stayed with him. 20 minutes later, he reached the checkout lane. The elderly cashier smiled. "You found everything?" "I think so." As she scanned his groceries, Keanu noticed two young employees stocking shelves nearby, a woman with dark brown hair tied into a loose ponytail. Maybe 24, trying to smile despite exhausted eyes. Beside her worked a young man carrying heavy boxes, 26 at most. Both wore faded green uniforms. Their name tags read, Emily, Daniel. Neither recognized Keanu, or if they did, they pretended not to. Emily accidentally dropped a package of cereal. It burst open across the floor. She immediately knelt. "I'm so sorry." Before anyone else moved, Keanu quietly crouched beside her. "It's okay." He helped gather the cereal. Emily looked embarrassed. "You don't have to help." He smiled gently. "I know, but I can." She laughed nervously. "Thanks." Daniel walked over carrying a broom. "Another accident?" Emily sighed. "Guess so." Daniel smiled weakly. "It happens." The manager suddenly appeared, a man in his late 40s named Mr. Collins. His expression hardened immediately. "What happened here?" Emily stood. "I dropped it." Mr. Collins crossed his arms. "This is the third mistake this week." Emily lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." I'm getting tired of hearing, sorry. Daniel stepped forward. It wasn't a big... Mr. Collins interrupted sharply. I wasn't talking to you. The entire checkout area became uncomfortably quiet. Customers looked away. Nobody wanted to become involved. Keanu remained silent, watching, listening. Mr. Collins continued. If you can't focus, maybe this isn't the job for you. Emily's face turned pale. I'll clean everything. You'll clean it on your own time. Daniel clenched his fists. Sir, I said enough. Without another word, the manager walked away. Emily forced a smile. I'm okay. Daniel wasn't convinced. Neither was Keanu. Outside the store, the rain had finally stopped. Clouds slowly drifted apart. Keanu loaded his groceries into the trunk of his old motorcycle. He could have left, gone home, forgotten the entire afternoon. Instead, he sat quietly on a nearby bench across the street, watching. Not because he was curious, because something didn't feel finished. An hour later, the store closed. Employees slowly walked out carrying backpacks, laughing, talking, heading home. Finally, Emily and Daniel emerged together. Neither laughed, neither smiled. They walked several blocks before sitting at a small bus stop. Keanu remained where he was, far enough away not to disturb them, close enough to notice something. Emily opened her backpack. Inside were dozens of medical papers, insurance forms, prescription receipts, hospital letters. Daniel rubbed his forehead. We're still short, Emily whispered. I know. Maybe we should sell the car. It won't cover enough. What about another loan? No bank will approve us. Emily stared at the pavement. I don't want Mom worrying. Daniel nodded slowly. Neither do I. A long silence followed. Finally, Emily asked quietly, What if? We lose this job too? Daniel didn't answer, because he didn't have one. Keanu looked toward the evening sky. Sometimes life wasn't cruel because of one tragedy. Sometimes it was the weight of 10 small ones arriving together. The next morning, Keanu returned to the same grocery store. This time he bought only a bottle of water. Emily looked surprised. Good morning. Morning, she smiled politely. You came back. I forgot the water yesterday. She laughed softly. That happens. Keanu noticed dark circles beneath her eyes. You look tired, she hesitated. Long week. I hope today is better. I hope so too. She handed him his receipt. Have a nice day. You too. Before leaving, Keanu quietly glanced toward Daniel. He was unloading delivery crates by himself. Heavy ones, much heavier than anyone should lift alone. Another employee walked past without helping. Daniel simply kept working. Later that afternoon, Keanu returned again, this time with coffee. 4 cups. 1 for the cashier, 1 for Daniel, 1 for Emily, 1 for Mr. Collins. The manager looked confused. What's this for? Just saying thank you. Mr. Collins accepted it reluctantly. Emily smiled brighter than she had all week. You really didn't have to. I know, but I wanted to. Daniel took his coffee carefully. Thanks. For the first time, they all stood together, talking. Not as strangers, simply as people. Keanu never mentioned movies, never mentioned Hollywood, never mentioned who he was. Instead, he asked simple questions. How long have you worked here? Emily answered. 3 years. Daniel nodded. Almost 4. You like it? Emily smiled honestly. I like helping customers. Daniel shrugged. I like paying bills. Everyone laughed, even Mr. Collins. For just a moment. The heaviness disappeared as Keanu prepared to leave. An elderly customer rushed inside, looking frightened. My wallet! I lost my wallet! Employees immediately searched every aisle. Daniel checked outside. Emily searched beneath checkout counters. 10 anxious minutes passed. Nothing. The woman began crying. My husband's medication. My identification. Everything was inside, without hesitation. Daniel quietly reached into his own pocket. He pulled out every dollar he had. It's not much, but maybe it'll help until you find it. Emily added the cash from her purse. So will this. The elderly woman stared at them. You don't even know me. Daniel smiled gently. You looked like you needed someone, standing near the entrance. Keanu watched silently. His eyes softened. These two young workers, who barely had enough money for themselves, had just given away nearly everything in their wallets, without thinking twice, without expecting recognition. Without cameras, without applause, just kindness. Minutes later, another customer found the missing wallet beneath a shopping cart. Nothing had been stolen. The elderly woman hugged both employees. Tears streamed down her face. You've reminded me there are still good people. She left smiling. Daniel looked inside his nearly empty wallet. Emily laughed. I guess we're eating noodles again. Daniel chuckled. Worth it. Keanu stood motionless. Something inside him shifted. He suddenly understood. The conversation he had overheard yesterday wasn't the whole story. These weren't simply two workers struggling to survive. They were the kind of people who chose kindness, even when life gave them almost nothing. He quietly walked toward the exit. As the automatic doors opened, his phone vibrated. The screen showed. A call from an old friend who managed a charitable foundation, Keanu answered. I've been thinking, he said before his friend could speak. I may have found two people we need to meet. But before he could say another word, a loud crash echoed from the back of the store. Someone screamed. Employees began running toward the storage room. Keanu spun around instantly. His expression changed. Without hesitation, he ran inside. The scream echoed through the grocery store like a bolt of lightning. Customers froze. Shopping carts stopped rolling. A glass bottle shattered somewhere near the produce section. Keanu Reeves dropped everything and sprinted toward the storage room. Daniel reached the door at the same moment. Emily! He shoved the door open. Inside, several heavy metal shelves leaned dangerously to one side. Boxes of canned food had crashed onto the floor, and one of the tallest storage racks had partially collapsed. Emily was trapped beneath a pile of boxes. A frightened teenage stock clerk stood against the wall, shaking. I bumped the shelf, he stammered. It just started falling. Without wasting a second, Keanu and Daniel rushed forward. Careful, Keanu called. The rack is still unstable. Daniel ignored the pain in his own shoulder and climbed over scattered boxes to reach his sister. Emily tried to smile despite the tears forming in her eyes. I'm okay. No, you're not, Daniel said firmly. Keanu knelt beside the twisted metal support. On 3. Together they lifted the shelf just enough for Emily to crawl free. Another employee helped pull her to safety. The manager, Mr. Collins, arrived seconds later, his face pale. Call an ambulance. Emily shook her head. I don't think it's broken. But when she tried to stand, her right ankle gave way. She nearly fell. Keanu caught her before she hit the floor. You don't need to prove you're strong, he said gently. Let the doctors decide. For a brief moment, Emily looked directly into his eyes. Something about this quiet stranger felt familiar. Not because she recognized him, because his calm voice reminded her of someone who had carried many invisible burdens himself. The hospital visit an hour. Later. Emily sat in the emergency department with her ankle wrapped in ice. Daniel paced endlessly. The hospital television played quietly in the corner. Neither of them noticed Keanu sitting several chairs away. He hadn't left. When the nurse finally approached, everyone stood. Good news, she smiled. No fracture. Daniel released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But, the nurse continued, the ligaments are badly strained. Emily would need several weeks of limited movement. Daniel's face fell. Several weeks. No work, no overtime, no extra income. Exactly what they couldn't afford. After the nurse walked away, Emily whispered, "I'll be back at work tomorrow." Daniel stared. "You're joking. We need the paycheck. You can barely stand. We don't have a choice." Keanu listened quietly. He knew that sentence. We don't have a choice. Millions of people carried those words every single day. An unexpected conversation later that evening. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty. Daniel stood beside a vending machine counting loose coins. One coffee or one sandwich, not both. He sighed. Before he could decide, someone placed 2 warm meals on the nearby table. Daniel looked up. It was Keanu. "I ordered too much," Keanu said casually. "I'd hate to waste it." Daniel smiled politely. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but I already did." For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel extended his hand. "I'm Daniel." "Keanu." They shook hands. No recognition, just 2 strangers. Daniel laughed quietly. "I feel strange accepting help." Keanu smiled. "I've been on both sides." That sentence caught Daniel's attention. "You have?" Keanu nodded. "There were years when someone buying me dinner made the difference between eating and pretending I wasn't hungry." Daniel looked surprised. "You?" Keanu simply shrugged. "Life has chapters people don't always see." The words stayed with Daniel. For the first time in days, he spoke honestly, not because he wanted sympathy, because something about this stranger felt safe. "Our mom has heart failure." Keanu remained silent, listening. "The surgery is expensive," Daniel continued. "Insurance covers some of it, but not enough." He looked down. "Dad passed away 4 years ago. Emily postponed college. I work 2 jobs. She works 6 days a week. We've sold almost everything we own." He smiled bitterly. "But somehow, it still isn't enough." Keanu didn't interrupt once. Sometimes people don't need advice. They need someone willing to hear the entire story. A promise. Never spoken, that night Keanu drove home through quiet streets. The city lights blurred against the windshield. His mind wasn't on movies, or interviews, or business meetings. It stayed with 2 siblings who kept giving to others despite having almost nothing themselves. He walked into his house. His dog greeted him happily. Normally he would smile immediately. Tonight. He stood silently in the kitchen. Then he picked up his phone. He called an old friend named Michael. Michael directed a charitable organization that quietly helped families during medical emergencies. No publicity, no cameras, no press releases, just help. "Hey," Michael answered. "It's late." "I know. I need a favor." Michael laughed. "When you start a conversation like that, it usually changes someone's life." Keanu looked out the window. Maybe, but only if they never know where it came from. The next morning back at the grocery store, Emily had returned. Against medical advice, she limped between aisles carrying far more weight than she should, Mr. Collins noticed. "You shouldn't be here." "I'll be fine. You have a doctor's note. I need the hours." Mr. Collins frowned. For once, he didn't argue. Instead, he quietly reassigned her to the checkout counter. No lifting, no stocking, no heavy work. Emily blinked. "Thank you." He simply nodded. Sometimes kindness arrived awkwardly. People didn't always know how to express it. The forgotten lunch around noon. Daniel opened his lunchbox. Empty. He had accidentally left it at home. Emily sighed. "We'll split mine." Before she could open her sandwich, an elderly customer approached. "You two," they looked up. It was the woman whose wallet had been found the previous day. She carried 2 paper bags. "I made extra." Daniel smiled. "You didn't have to." "I know." She grinned. but someone once reminded me that kindness should keep moving. Inside the bags, fresh soup, homemade bread, fruit cookies. Emily laughed through tears. Daniel looked speechless. After the woman left, Emily whispered, "Do you think kindness really comes back?" Daniel looked toward the front entrance. "I hope so." Neither noticed Keanu quietly entering the store again. He had seen everything. Recognition late that afternoon. Something unexpected happened. A young customer waiting in line suddenly stared at Keanu. His eyes widened. Wait. He looked again. No way. Within seconds, his excitement spread. That's Keanu Reeves. Several customers turned. Phones slowly appeared. Whispers filled the store. Emily looked confused. She glanced at the quiet man buying apples, then back at the excited teenager, then at Daniel. Seriously? Daniel searched his face carefully, then his mouth slowly opened. Oh, my goodness. Keanu smiled sheepishly. The attention clearly made him uncomfortable. He politely greeted everyone, took a few photos, shook a few hands, then quietly prepared to leave. Before he reached the exit, Emily called after him. "Mr. Reeves?" He turned. "I." She smiled nervously. "I just wanted to say, thank you. For yesterday. For today. For being kind." Keanu answered with the same gentle smile. "Thank you. For reminding me kindness still exists." Then he walked out. Neither Emily nor Daniel realized those words carried far more meaning than they appeared to. A meeting behind. Closed doors that evening, Mr. Collins sat alone. In his tiny office finishing paperwork, someone knocked. "Come in." Keanu entered. Mr. Collins immediately stood. "I had no idea you were shopping here." Keanu laughed. Softly. "That's usually the goal." The manager smiled. "What can I do for you?" Keanu closed the office door. "I'd like to ask about 2 employees." Mr. Collins became serious. "Emily and Daniel?" "Yes," the manager leaned back. "If you're wondering whether they're honest, I've trusted them with the store keys. If you're wondering whether they work hard, they're the first to arrive. If you're wondering whether they care, I've never met anyone who cares more." He paused. "They're the reason this place still feels like a family store." Keanu nodded slowly, then asked the question that surprised Mr. Collins. "What? Aren't they telling anyone?" The manager hesitated. "They don't know I know." He opened a drawer. Inside was an envelope, filled with unpaid invoices, hospital bills, prescription receipts, letters from collection, agencies. They've been trying to protect their mother. They think no one notices. But I've watched them skip lunch, work overtime, and smile through every shift. He sighed. Heavily. "I've wanted to help, but I don't know how." Keanu looked thoughtfully at the papers. Then he quietly asked, "What if someone helped without taking away their dignity?" Mr. Collins looked at him for several seconds. Neither man spoke. Finally, slow smile appeared on the manager's face. "I think they'd accept that." Letter 2 mornings later. Emily arrived for work, waiting. Inside her locker was a plain white envelope. No. Name to no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Someone believes in the kindness you've given the buy. World, please don't stop." Attached, beneath the note, was a cashier's check. Enough to cover every remaining hospital expense. Emily stared. She couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled violently. Daniel rushed over. "What happened?" She silently handed him the envelope. His eyes widened. This can't be real." There was no signature, no clue, no explanation, only one final sentence. "One day, when life allows." Pass kindness forward, both siblings stood, speechless. Neither noticed the security camera quietly, recording the moment. Across the street, inside, a parked car. Keanu watched from a distance. He smiled, then started the engine. never intended for them to know. But just as he prepared to drive away, his phone rang. It was Michael. His voice sounded, "Urgent, Keanu, I need you to come to the hospital." What happened? It's their mother. There have been unexpected complications. Keanu's smile disappeared instantly. Without another word, he turned the car around and accelerated toward the hospital. Keanu gripped the steering wheel tighter as he drove toward the hospital. The afternoon traffic seemed endless. Every red light felt longer than the last. His mind wasn't filled with fear for himself. It was filled with concern for a family he had known only a few days, but somehow felt connected to. When he arrived, Michael was waiting outside the cardiac unit. The doctors stabilized her, Michael said. Keanu exhaled slowly, but the surgery can't wait any longer. Keanu nodded. Have the bills been taken care of? Michael smiled. They have. The anonymous payment cleared this morning. Keanu looked relieved. Then what's the problem? Michael's expression softened. She refuses to schedule the operation. Keanu frowned. Why? Michael looked toward the waiting room. Because she believes the money belongs to someone who needs it more. For a long moment, Keanu said nothing. He had expected gratitude. He had not expected this. A mother's heart inside. The waiting room sat a woman in her early 60s. Her face looked tired, but her eyes carried remarkable warmth. This was Margaret, Emily, and Daniel's mother. She held the envelope in both hands as though it were something sacred. The anonymous note had become more than financial help. It had become proof that goodness still existed, Emily pleaded. Gently, Mom, please, we finally have enough. Margaret shook her head. What, if another family is in greater need? Daniel knelt beside her chair. You spent your whole life putting everyone else first? It's your turn. Now, she smiled sadly. A mother's turn never comes. Keanu watched quietly from a distance. His own memories surfaced. He remembered his mother working tirelessly when he was young. He remembered sacrifices no child fully understands until adulthood. He knew this kind of love, the kind that never asked for recognition. A different kind of conversation. Keanu slowly approached. Excuse me. Margaret looked up. Politely. Yes? I couldn't help overhearing. She smiled kindly. I'm afraid hospitals don't leave much privacy. Keanu sat nearby. My name is Keanu. She tilted her head. The young man from the grocery store. He nodded. You remember. You helped my daughter after the accident. She smiled. I've been praying for strangers like you. Keanu looked down for a moment. Then, he asked a simple question. What would you tell your children if they were in your position? Margaret answered without hesitation. I'd tell them their life is precious, and if they refuse treatment because they worried about someone else, I'd tell them they're making a mistake. Keanu smiled gently. Then, perhaps you should listen to your own advice. Silence filled the room. Margaret looked at her children. For the first time, she realized they weren't asking her to survive for herself. They were asking her to stay because they still needed their mother. Tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. She reached for Daniel's hand. Then, Emily's. Finally, she whispered, Tell the doctors, I'm ready. The longest night, the surgery, lasted almost 7 hours. Time moved differently. Inside hospital waiting rooms, coffee grew cold, conversations became whispers. Every opening door caused everyone to stand. Emily paced constantly. Daniel stared at the floor. Keanu stayed. Not because anyone expected him, because leaving didn't feel right. Around midnight, a little boy wandered into the waiting area carrying a stuffed dinosaur. He sat beside Keanu. Mister? Keanu smiled. Hi, are you waiting too? I am. My grandma says waiting is harder than being brave. Keanu chuckled softly. Your grandma sounds wise. The little boy nodded proudly. She Always says people should never sit alone in hospitals. Then he looked around. So I come. Talk to lonely people. Keanu laughed. You've already made my night. Better? The boy handed him a small paper. Star, I made this. It's for good luck. Keanu accepted it carefully. Thank you. He slipped the paper star into his jacket pocket. Years later, he would still keep it. There. Good news at 2:17 a.m. The operating room doors finally opened. The surgeon removed his mask. Everyone stood immediately. The doctor smiled. The surgery was successful. Emily burst into tears. Daniel hugged her tightly for several seconds. Neither could speak. Margaret would recover slowly, but she would recover. The family turned to thank the quiet stranger who had stayed beside them all. Night, but Keanu had quietly stepped outside. He believed some moments belonged entirely to the people, living them. The discovery several days. Later, Emily and Daniel returned to work. Life felt lighter, not easier, just filled with hope again. Customers noticed. Their smiles looked genuine now. One afternoon, the elderly cashier approached them holding a newspaper. Have you seen today's article? Daniel glanced at the front page. His eyes widened. There was a photograph of Keanu Reeves visiting a children's hospital. The article described his decades of quiet, charitable work. Anonymous. Donations, scholarships, support. For hospitals, meals for homeless families, helping crew members, paying medical bills. Emily read, silently, then looked at Daniel. The handwriting, he blinked. The note, she nodded. It looks exactly the same. Daniel suddenly remembered. The coffee. The hospital. The envelope. The anonymous kindness. Both siblings froze. Could it really have been? No, surely not an answer. They never expected a week later. A black motorcycle parked outside the grocery store. Keanu walked in, carrying only a reusable shopping bag. Emily smiled immediately. Welcome back. Daniel walked over. We've been wanting to ask you something. Keanu tilted his head. Go ahead. Daniel carefully placed the anonymous note on the counter. We've asked everyone. No one knows who left. This? Emily looked directly into his eyes. Was it you? For a long moment, Keanu didn't answer. Then he smiled. Does it matter? Emily thought carefully. No. He nodded. Then maybe that's the answer. Daniel laughed quietly. You really aren't going to tell us? Keanu shrugged playfully. Some stories are stronger without names. Emily wiped away a tear. Then whoever did it, one saved. Our family, Keanu answered softly. No, you saved each other. I only happened to walk into the right store. A new beginning. Months passed. Margaret regained her strength. Emily enrolled in evening college classes she had postponed years earlier. Daniel accepted a management training position Mr. Collins proudly promoted him. The grocery store slowly became known for something unusual. Customers didn't come only for groceries. They came because employees remembered names, helped elderly, shoppers carry bags, checked on neighbors. Collected food for struggling families, kindness, became part of the store's identity. Other businesses noticed. Local newspapers wrote about it. Community groups volunteered. One anonymous act had quietly inspired hundreds more. The idea that grew one evening, Emily found the paper star Keanu had accidentally dropped while helping unload supplies. She remembered him mentioning the little boy in the hospital. An idea formed. What if she turned toward Daniel? People could leave anonymous stars instead of anonymous money? Daniel smiled. For what? For kindness. They created a simple bulletin board near the entrance. Anyone could write about an act of kindness they had witnessed. No names, no rewards, no publicity, only stories. First, there were 3 stars, then 12, then 50. Within months, the entire wall glittered with hundreds of handwritten paper stars. One, read, "A stranger paid for my groceries." Another, "Someone returned my lost wallet." Untouched. Another, "A young employee carried my bags when my arthritis hurt." Soon, schools copied the idea. Libraries, coffee shops, hospitals, community centers. Thousands of paper stars appeared across the city. Every one carried the same message: kindness matters. 1 year later, exactly 1 year after the day Keanu overheard that conversation, the grocery store held a small community celebration. No celebrities, no expensive decorations, just neighbors sharing homemade food, children laughing, music playing. Softly, Mr. Collins stepped onto a tiny wooden platform. "I've managed this store for 23 years. He looked around the crowd. "I thought success meant selling more groceries." He smiled. "I was wrong. Success is seeing people care for one." "Another!" The crowd applauded. Then Emily walked to the microphone. She held the original, anonymous note. "This changed our lives." She looked toward the audience. "We still don't officially know who wrote." Several people smiled knowingly, including one man standing quietly near the back, wearing a baseball cap. Emily continued. "But over the last year, we realized something. The greatest gift wasn't the money. It was being reminded that compassion still exists. And now, it's our turn to keep it alive." The crowd stood in applause. Keanu quietly slipped away before anyone could notice. Just as he reached his motorcycle, a little girl ran toward him. "Excuse me?" He turned. She held out a folded paper star. "My teacher says you should always give these to someone kind." Keanu accepted it gently. "Thank you?" She smiled. "My dad says heroes wear capes." Keanu looked at the small paper star, then back at her. "I think real heroes wear grocery store uniforms." The little girl grinned. "I like that better." She ran back to her family. Keanu placed the second paper star beside the first one inside his jacket pocket. He started the motorcycle. As he rode away into the evening sunlight, he glanced once in the mirror. The grocery store looked exactly the same as it had the day he first walked in. Same brick walls, same faded sign, same small parking lot. Yet, everything had changed, not because one famous actor had entered a store, but because two ordinary workers had chosen generosity even when life was at its hardest. Keanu smiled to himself. Fame could inspire admiration. Money could solve problems. But kindness could start a chain reaction that no one could ever measure. Sometimes, the most important conversation in your life isn't the one you join, it's the one you quietly overhear and choose to answer with compassion instead.